Hello, and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, we have quite the stories for you. But before we begin, I hope you're all having a great Monday. Today is Monday, April 7th, 2025. And it's chilly out again. It's chilly. I feel like I talk about the weather so much. I've been compared to an old man with the amount of times I talk about the weather on this show, but I feel like the weather is such a large part of our lives and what we're doing on a regular basis. I know it's chilly out here in the Midwest today, at least around where I live. So a whole lot of people haven't been doing anything, but down south, hope you all are doing good. I hope it's finally starting to defreeze, starting to thaw out. All you in the north who've been popsicles all winter long. But like I said, hope you're having a good day. Hope you're having a great time wherever you're at. I hope that you had a good weekend, and I guess we should get right into today's stories. So starting off, this is a story from the BBC. So 2 members of parliament are astounded after being denied entry to Israel. Now, the international news does not reach us as Americans all that often, but when it does, it seems to be kind of a big deal, right? So this is yet another one of those stories where we would have never heard about anything like this, but clearly it was a big deal. So I felt like, let's talk about it. Throw a little bit of international news into our show today. So the BBC, 2 Labour members of parliament, and Labour is the more left-wing party in England, in Great Britain, say they are astounded to have been denied entry to Israel while on a trip to visit the occupied West Bank. Abistam Mohammed and Yanu Yang said it was vital parliamentarians were able to witness the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory firsthand. They were refused entry because they intended to spread hate speech against Israel, the nation's Population and Immigration Authority said. Foreign Secretary David Lammy criticized Israel authorities, describing the move as unacceptable, counterproductive, and deeply concerning. But conservative leader Cami Bednock said Israel had a right to, quote, control its borders, adding it was significant there were Labour MPs other countries did not want to let in. The Israeli embassy in London said in a statement on Saturday that the country, quote, will not allow the entry of individuals or entities that act against the state and its citizens. It said Mohammed and Yang had, quote, accused Israel of false claims and were, quote, actively involved in promoting sanctions against Israeli ministers. It also said they had supported campaigns aimed at boycotting the country, quote, at a time when Israel is at war and under attack on 7 fronts. So I think this is an interesting story just in that it's made international news. And I agree with the Conservative Party's leader in that there have been Labour MPs that have been denied in other countries, but yet those don't make international news the way that this does. But the reason why we're seeing this here, at least in the United States, is that this is Israel going against the left wing and saying, hey, we're going to control who comes in and out of our country. We're going to stand up for the rights that we believe in. And we believe that these parliamentarians here, these 2 ladies, do not represent our values, and on top of that, intend to spread hatred within our country, or at least on an international scale. My thoughts are, I'd like to know how true that actually is, and I would also think, at least from my perspective, that by not allowing them in, you are potentially causing a bigger conflict to happen internationally, that, now we have a lot of artillery saying, hey, they're not letting politicians from the party that opposes them into their country. Oh, now all of a sudden, now it's a negative, right? Now it's on Israel to have to defend themselves. So the way that I see it is it's kind of a double-edged sword of would it be more worth it to allow them in and not give the negative press against Israel and just see what ends up happening because of it, or was it worth it them just say no, we're not allowing you in, period, and then have to deal with the fallout like stories like this. So I just thought it was an interesting story. I always find it interesting when different countries decide what they're going to do about in times of war and crisis, and Israel certainly is in a war and crisis right now, especially with what's happening in Gaza over the past couple of years, and hopefully that gets ended sooner rather than later. But it's interesting to see, and especially with politics internationally, especially when you look at what's even happening in Great Britain right now when it comes to their parliament and what happened in the most recent elections. We're having a lot of stir-ups worldwide when it comes to news like this. So I like talking about a little bit about when it comes, but that was just kind of introduce us to all this. So let's move in. Our next story comes from the Washington Post. That's to do with Kellogg's. So the Texas Attorney General says he's investigating Kellogg's over healthy cereal claims. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said Saturday that his office is investigating WK Kellogg Co. for potentially violating consumer protection laws, launching a probe over the artificial food dyes in cereals that have ranked the Trump administration's Make America Great Again faction. In a statement Saturday, Paxton's office said the company, known for cereals such as Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks, advertises its products as healthy, despite containing blue, red, yellow, green, and orange artificial food colorings. Paxton's office alleged that those additives have been linked to obesity, autoimmune disease, endocrine-related health problems, and cancer. Paxton's office said Kellogg's had failed to remove the artificial food dyes from versions of its products sold in the United States, despite previously announcing they would do so by 2018. Quote, artificial food colorings have been shown to have disastrous impacts on health, and in no world should foods include these dyes be advertised as healthy, Paxton said in a statement. Quote, there will be accountability for any company, including Kellogg's, that unlawfully make misrepresentations about its food and contributions to a broken health system that has made America less healthy. Kennedy has criticized some chemicals. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health and Human Services Secretary, has criticized some chemicals and ingredients found in food and drinks. Last year, he falsely claimed that the version of Fruit Loops sold in Canada has, quote, 2 or 3 ingredients compared to those sold in the United States. Kennedy also falsely told conservative podcaster Steve Gruber that food dyes cause tumors and behavioral issues in children. Quote, if you look at a pack of Fruit Loops in this country, it's all chemical dyes, yellow, blue, red, which are all poison, Kennedy said. In Canada, across the border, Fruit Loops are a different color. They're all colored vegetable oils. It's the same company. Kellogg's knows how to create safer products that don't have chemicals in them. So you can make the claims that Robert F. Kennedy falsely said this, that, or the other, but when it comes down to it, in other countries, especially over in Europe and even in Canada to an extent, they have stricter laws on what can go into their foods and how foods are advertised to people, which means that different ingredients are ended up put into them. So if you look at Nutella, for instance, in France compared to Nutella in the United States, Nutella, which is that hazelnut chocolate spread people put on toast and stuff in the morning, right? Delicious, right? In the United States, it's packed with tons of chemicals, right? Versus in Europe, it is primarily made of actual whole real ingredients, and it tastes exactly the same. I mean, I've heard people even argue that I'm sure that the one that has real ingredients in it probably even tastes a little bit better than it does in the United States. But it just goes to show you that these companies make products in the United States that they sell healthier ones in other parts of the world. Same thing with what's happening to Kellogg's, right? Cereal companies make cereal in the United States and then sell it in Europe with different ingredients in it, like Kennedy said, with natural food dyes in it that are made out of vegetable oils and stuff, right? So you can use like beet juice, you can use beet, You can use a beet to produce kind of a reddish flavor, right? It doesn't have the same bright, colorful flavors, the same bright color that it does in the United States. But it's a natural flavor and it tastes just the same and it's better for you, right? So does it really need to have that, blaring red color to it, or can it be a little bit more muted, right? Because we're using a natural vegetable versus an actual, artificial carcinogen and putting into food. So I totally agree with all that. I think this is great. The other thing that I'd like to point out is France has a system on their product packaging. So if you look at a cereal box, for instance, right on the front, it actually gives a scale of how healthy that item is. I think it gives it an A, B, C, D, or E, or maybe an F scale. And there's an arrow that literally points at if it's healthy for you or not, based on the ingredients inside of it. So fruits and vegetables get an A, but something more like a cereal in Europe is going to get more of a C or a D, because it's not healthy for you, right? We should not be eating nearly the amount of grains that we're eating. The entire lie of the food pyramid that, our meals should be made up of lots of grains and carbs is totally wrong, right? Our eating habits should be made up of lots of protein and lots of whole fruits and vegetables and a little bit of grain on the side, right? It should not be primarily made up of that. So it's interesting how different countries have handled things like this. And, it's one of these issues where I'm not typically a fan of regulating an industry or putting more regulations onto companies or using government to enforce regulations. But I am a fan of using government to make citizens healthier, and that is one of the roles of government, is to make people healthy, to keep people to at least provide a baseline to keep products across the board on a more healthy scale for people to consume. And I think what Europe has done is great in banning a lot of these artificial ingredients and stuff, and trying to keep their foods more pure, at least what they're giving to people. And the Europeans are healthier, right? If you look at the obesity epidemic across the world, right, but it's very high here in the United States. So it's just, it's interesting for me to see. I'm looking forward to where this probe goes to, and we'll be sure to update you on it in the future. All right, let's go and move on. So the title of this episode is Tariffs. So let's talk about some tariffs. So this next story comes from the New York Post. Trump threatens China with additional 50% tariff if Beijing doesn't scrap its retaliation. President Trump threatened Monday to hit China with an additional 50% tariff if Beijing doesn't lower its 34% retaliatory tariff on the U.S. by Tuesday. Quote, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trade abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th, Trump posted on Truth Social. The president imposed an additional 34% tariff on China during his reciprocal duty announcement April 2nd, adding to it an already imposed 20% levy earlier in his administration. So he's really putting his fist down on this one now, guys. In response, Beijing announced its own 34% tariff early Friday to take effect April 10th. Additionally, all talks with China concerning their request meeting us will be terminated, Trump added in his post. Negotiations with other countries which have also requested meetings will begin taking place immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett has said that more than 50 countries have tried to talk with Trump about his tariff mandate, and the president is meeting face-to-face with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this afternoon after imposing 17% duties on the Jewish state. Trump has said he already spoke to leaders of Japan and European and Asian countries about negotiating rates, and conversations are ongoing to possibly lift the levies after markets dip. So we talked about, he said he was talking to Europe, and I guess we should talk about Europe now. So overarching, we're going to go right into our next story of this one. Usually I give a little comment after these, but I'll give my comment after both. So going into Europe. So this title from Breitbart is entitled The Art of the Deal. So EU offers Trump 0 for 0 tariffs on industrial goods with the United States. So China is not backing down. Trump is threatening to up their tariffs. Meanwhile, the EU is saying, all right, let's back down and we'll be even, right? EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said Monday that the bloc has offered a 0 for 0 tariff trade arrangement on industrial goods with the United States in a bid to avoid a full-on trade war. Well, the EU chief continued to condemn the reciprocal tariff measures enacted by the U.S. President Donald Trump to rectify the long-standing transatlantic trade imbalance. As pressure from the markets began to take shape, von der Leyen and other top bureaucrats expressed willingness to negotiate with the White House. Quote, "We stand ready to negotiate with the U.S., the EU president said. Quote, "We have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table." However, the German politician did not address other significant areas of concern expressed by the Trump administration, such as restrictions on American food imports, or perhaps more significantly on EU tariffs against US-made automobiles, which currently stand at around 4 times the rate European cars are taxed when sent to the United States. Von der Leyen warned that Brussels is prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests if the trade dispute continues. The EU chief said that Brussels will take a two-pronged approach towards the Trump tariffs. Firstly, by reducing international barriers within the bloc, as opposed to reducing further barriers with the US, and of diversifying Europe's trading partners. So, I'm skeptical of the Trump administration's economic policy right now. I'm skeptical of it, but it seems to be working at least a little bit in some areas. So I think this is great that if we up the tariffs over in Europe, that all of a sudden now they're backing down and saying, hey, let's go to a 0 for 0 tariff policy with the United States. I think that's a good thing, right? That we're equally trading goods back and forth. We're not taxing one way or another, right? So I'm interested to see where this plays out. Like I said, I'm reserving a lot of my opinions on the Trump economy until we get at least a year in. Get back to me January of next year, and we'll look at the numbers and see if things have really improved or not. And we'll go from there. So I'm holding out hope that people far smarter than I am with economics, have a plan in place within the Treasury Department, within the Department of Commerce, within the Trump administration as a whole, for how they're going to play this out. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this goes. So hopefully it ends up working out better for us as Americans, that we get better trade deals. But we'll see how it goes. So, I know that we get more industrial goods from Europe versus China. We got a lot more consumer grade goods from China. I mean, probably half the things on your desk are made in China, if not more, right? This computer that I'm streaming this on was made in China, right? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, and how much the American consumer is actually impacted by these tariffs, and if we come out with a stronger economy because of it or not. So the reason why I say I'm holding out judgment for at least a year is when we get into January of 2026, that's really when the heat's going to be on for a lot of these people in Congress to start campaigning. And if they don't have measurable results to be able to campaign on, right, it's going to be a slaughter in the midterms for Republicans. So my hope is that the plan that's in place, at least the logical plan for me, is that, hey, we start to have measurable results, hopefully by more October, November time. So by the time that Congress is going out and campaigning for the 2026 midterms, they can say, hey, we put these tariffs in place and look, prices went down. We put these tariffs in place and look, our economy's stronger, right? We put these tariffs in place and X, Y, and Z happened that's benefited you as the consumer, you as the average working class American, right? We'll see how that goes. All right. Last thing that I want to talk about is something I saw on TikTok. So this video kind of crossed my feed, and this gentleman, his name is Zachary Loft on TikTok. He has 1.7 million followers on TikTok. I guess he's a realtor in Delaware. His bio says certified BlackRock hater. So, I mean, I think that I don't know if anyone who watches the show is a fan of BlackRock. I certainly am not. But he makes a whole bunch of financial related videos about the housing market and everything. Go give his videos some watches. I mean, I think they're solid content. But he just released what he's calling the Trump Tracker. So he created this spreadsheet called the Trump Tracker, the TURMP tracker specifically. And it measures a lot of quantifiable metrics that have to do with the current housing market. So I've talked about the housing market a lot on this show as someone who is going into the workforce within the next year and is hopefully going to be looking for a house within the next 3 to 5 years. This is a big deal for me, right? So I want to know how the housing market is doing, and hopefully the Trump administration is making it better. Because under the Joe Biden administration, I certainly couldn't afford a house, and even right now, I still certainly could not afford many of the houses in the areas that I would want to move to at some point. So this spreadsheet is tracking quantifiable metrics that have to do with housing, with affordability of housing, and how the Trump administration is actually doing with the housing market. So we'll go through this. So this first big section right under Trump Tracker, it says Trump's promises, and this is from a lot of his agendas. And by the way, there are links within the spreadsheet. If you're watching this on Rumble or YouTube, the link to this is in the description if you want to go and view it for yourself. But there are links to like hyperlinks within all this. And I'll show you one of them in a minute to back up all the claims that are being shown on the spreadsheet. This wasn't just thrown together. So Trump stands for total home increase. Regulatory costs get cut. Unaffordability is fixed. Mortgage rates get slashed. Prepare first-time home buyers to buy. So TRUMP, total regulatory unaffordability mortgage prepare, right? Stands for Trump. Fun little acronym, right? So these are the 5 points that the Trump administration is trying to focus on, making homes more affordable. Right underneath that, they have a bill tracker that has to do with bills coming out of the House or the Senate that have to do with making homes more affordable. So you can see the bill's name, the purpose, and if they've been continued on, I suppose. I'm assuming that this is straight across or kind of a different variation of the bill, or there's just more bills out there. Oh, excuse me. There's the bills that are being listed here on the left side are all the ones that are dead. The ones that are on the right side are the ones that have been referred to a committee. So, for instance, HB 8604 assists young homebuyers, that the status of the bill is dead. But HB 965, which aids disabled veteran housing, has been referred to the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, right? So part of this is tracking legislation that has to do with home buying in the United States and making home buying easier for people in my generation, as well as all Americans specifically. But most importantly, people getting into the market right now. Because if you purchase a house, 20, 30 years ago, you're sitting pretty because your house prices skyrocketed through the roof, right? You're making a handsome profit on whatever you purchase your home for. But if you're someone like me who's a first-time home buyer, going to have a hard time getting into that market, right? There's the unaffordability is real, and that's shown in affordability by region here. So we can see the metric here on the left-hand column, and then it's divided up in the regions, so Northeast, Midwest, South, and West regions. So we can see the median price for resale homes in the Northeast is $489,000. In the West, it's $626,000. As cheapest in the Midwest at around $300,000, right? Same thing for median qualifying income. So it's cheapest in the South right now, even though the South has some of the high, is the second high or the second lowest median home resale value. It is the lowest for median qualifying income, just $96,000, versus the highest in the West with $160,000. So the median mortgage right now also, it's the lowest in the Midwest at $1,500 versus the highest in the West at $3,300. So these are just fun metrics to kind of go through and see how they're going. They're updating these as updates become available. Underneath that, there's also crash signals. So there's a lot of variables here on market crashes. So the unemployment rate, the FHA mortgage delinquency rate, the total mortgage delinquency rate, total housing supply, disposable income of homeowners, foreclosure rates, business loan delinquencies, delinquency rate on all home loans, credit card delinquencies, car payment defaults, rental vacancy rates, right? And you can go and click on these links and it'll take you directly to the site that has it. So you can see here, this took you directly to the actual government website that has to do with unemployment rates, and it's being updated as time goes on. So it's interesting to see. So you can see that right now it's its current 4.2%. If you look at the actual table here, if you scroll all the way over, 4.2 for March 2025. So this is updated currently for March, right? So fun tracker to go through. There's a few other parts on it. So over here, the second key metric that they're showing is housing metrics. So resale, median home resale, new construction median price, and affordable housing median price. So new construction median price is $370, resale is $385. So according to this, it's cheaper to actually build a new home versus buy an existing one. Sorry, excuse me, I'm reading it wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself. So one of these is the target price, one of these is the current price, and one of these is the start price from the beginning of the Trump administration, as well as the total change. So the idea here is the current price of the median price of a resale home in the United States is $398,000. At the start of the Trump administration, it was $393,000. So it's changed by $5,000, right? In the negative, it's gone up since Trump has come into office. But the price to build a new home has gone from $416,000 to $414,000. So it's gone down in price. It's gone down $2,400 to build a new home, right? And then the affordable housing home metric, median price for affordable housing, that hasn't changed at all. So it shows you what it was at the start of the Trump administration, where it is now. So you can see how have things changed since the beginning of the administration. All of these, like I said, are clickable links you can go to and view the actual table for them. So you can also see down here current mortgage rates. At the start of the administration, they were 7.7%. Now they're 6.8%, so they're down 0.3%. All of these are down slightly for mortgage rates, for 10-year Treasury yields, all those. You can also see bills in Congress and resale prices. And I like that they have on here, there's a target, right? So they're shooting, so the resale median for a home, the target they're shooting for nationwide is $385,000, and said $398. So it's not that far off. It's only off, about $12,000. But the difference between the target for new construction and current, so new construction, the median cost for new construction is $414,000 right now. The target is $370. So quite a bit of difference there. And then even coming down here to mortgage rates, the target mortgage rate is 5.15%, and we're sitting at 6.8%, and it was 7%. So lots of big changes there. The last part of this has to do with the cost tracker. So cost tracker shows other things that could be barriers to home prices right now in the United States. So those include lumber, steel, shingles, plumbing, and concrete prices. You can see how those have changed, the current and the start, based on the start of the Trump administration, as well as household expenditures such as power, milk, eggs, bread, home insurance, used car payments, and car insurance. You can see how all those have changed since the start of the Trump administration versus where they are right now. And the very bottom, it's not totally filled in yet, but is the big three. So supply, affordability, and depression. So the supply of homes in the United States is 500,000. The target is 2.2 million. Big difference there, right? And the affordability rate, There's also that metric as well. So a fun table to go through and just kind of look through to get a good sense of where the market is right now with home buying, home shopping, where affordability is at, and what's actually being done to show if things are being changed, right? Because it's one thing to say and promise that you're going to do one thing, such as Donald Trump has done. It's another thing to actually put that into action. So, I'll be keeping an eye on this spreadsheet and continually kind of viewing it and providing updates as time goes on. If you want to get notified for it, though, you can click the link at the top of this to get notified when big updates happen. So this isn't sponsored or anything. I don't know the person who created this. I just saw this and thought it was really cool that someone put together a data-driven table that shows exactly what is happening within the United States home buying market right now and how that's adjusting over time, which I think is great, right? Because it's good. It's good to point out when things are doing good and when people have done things to make them good. And it's also good to point out when people have done things that are bad and why they made them bad and how we can make it better, right? And this provides unbiased data from government sources that are reliable, that show what is currently happening in the United States when it comes down to home buying. So interesting metrics. Go look at them, peruse it for yourself. But that's all I got for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it so much. I know that I did. Please, please, please come join us back here on Wednesday. We're on YouTube, X, Rumble, Instagram. We're on all the platforms. We're streaming live to all these places. Come join us on those platforms. Give us a follow on YouTube, on Rumble, on Instagram, on X. Follow me on TikTok as well. Especially follow me on X. That's where all my updates are. I'm tweeting all the time on X. I'm putting them all out. I'm putting everything out there on X, right? That's the main spot where I review content from me, updates on the show, when we're doing streams, if we're doing anything special, if anything's changing, what's going on with all that. So be on the lookout for all of these things. And we'll be back here on Wednesday. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday. Have a good Tuesday. We'll see you back here on Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of Spin Cycle Live. We have so many more things to talk about on Wednesday. But until then, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. And we will see you back here Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode. But until then, peace out. Bye.